would take every one of us, everybody in this locker room, man. Collective mindset, it did take everybody, all right? Congrats on number 10, man. Heavy hitters now live here. I got a game ball to the first coach in his first season to get 10 wins in franchise history.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. That was the Commanders' locker room after a thrilling win.
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
Feel my arm. Yeah, look at that.
Every hair is prickly.
Yeah, but it's goosebumps. It's,
good for you guys. Good for Dan Quinn. The Commanders, what a turnaround.
That's living right. That's living right is what that is.
That locker room was impressively in sync.
Yes.
With every howl, scream, chant. It was awesome.
This is, and I don't know if he will, because there's a lot of great candidates, like Kevin O'Connell, et cetera, in terms of, but this is why I think Dan Quinn should win Coach of the Year, is because, obviously, like, I'm a homer, we all know this, but to your point, they are playing like a team. The reason they are overachieving, 5 is amazing, faith in 5, but honestly, like, they're doing it with, like, Olamide Zaccheaus and Dyami Brown. Like, they've got Zach Ertz was out of football 8 months ago. Like, they are doing it with, and the reason is because, yes, 5 and great coaching, but also they all believe in each other. Like, that's as together a team as you see in the NFL.
Yeah, no, it was a great win. I'm so glad I wasn't near you. All through yesterday would have been absolutely insufferable. But no, it was an awesome win. Jayden Daniels was magnificent.
Let's jump right into this game.
Do you want to see
what I did? Yeah, because we have a little surprise.
Yeah, exactly. So that's backup producer Pete in the hat in the far corner. That's me, and producer Damien is next to me.
Oh my God! Let's go! Oh my God!
That was a really good never in doubt.
Yeah.
Well timed.
Wow, it's like a little George Costanza punch.
Never in doubt. Yeah. Jamison Crowder, never in doubt. Well, because, by the way, prior to that play, whatever, I'm having the same conversation with Coach Garrett, and he's just like, I was kind of like Dyami Brown. He's talking, Coach Garrett is the most positive person you'll ever meet in your life, and I'm just
smiles often. Oh, like you have to respect that.
But he's the best. If you ever get a chance to meet him, he's as good a person as you'll ever meet. In this world, but we're going back and forth. I'm like, Dyami Brown has some nice traits out of North Carolina, and Zaccheaus will have a moment or two, and Crowder's a veteran, but like none of these guys should be a number 2 on an NFL franchise. They're all just like pieces. You know what I mean? And that's what they had to be like. I mean, Olamide Zaccheaus was the number 2 for Jayden Daniels, catches 2 passes, one of the broken touchdowns. One really was a really nice catch in the end zone with a ball that was slightly off for one of the touchdowns, but like. I don't know how they won that. They turned the ball over 6 times, 5 actual turnovers, and then a 4th and 1 that they didn't convert. So 6 turnovers. They had no business winning that game.
I'll tell you how they won the game. There's 3 reasons. 1, Jayden Daniels is awesome. 2, Kenny Pickett is not. And then 3, Devontae Smith dropped the easiest catch of his life. Like, game was done. If he holds that,
it shouldn't come down to that, though. They got 6 turnovers, Jay.
Yeah,
like,
I know
the
Eagles defense got
I understand
obliterated.
Everyone wants to beat up Devontae Smith for the bad drop, and I get it. That would have iced the game. But you got 6 turnovers.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to pick on.
I mean, like, come on.
Yeah,
it shouldn't have come down to that.
Yeah, and Greg Olsen was tweeting about it, and he said that, you get 33 points for your backup quarterback. From you, that's enough to win. Like,
that should be.
This was arguably the best defense in football coming in, and they got 6 turnovers, scored 33 points, and didn't win.
By the way, it's not only did they get 6 turnovers, but Washington was a one-dimensional offense, basically. Yeah. Brian Robinson fumbles twice, and then you don't hear from him. I believe of the running backs, they were like 15 for 31 or something like that, 15 for 32. Like, they couldn't run the – Jayden Daniels could run the ball, obviously. I mean, he had 80 yards rushing himself, but I'm just saying, like, they basically contained Jayden Daniels and you win this game, and they just couldn't, Jay.
Yep. And now, I think this is likely going to be a rematch in the playoffs. Could very easily be the 2v7. I think if the bracket holds that way. And
I am hoping that the Vikings beat the Packers next week, I think I forget who the Packers play. I think it's the Vikings.
Yeah, it's the Vikings.
Yeah. So if the Vikings beat the Packers and the Commanders win out, I think they'll be the 6, and they'll get to go to L.A. I think that's right.
Yeah,
I know
you'd
Steve
rather-
Kornacki,
yeah.
but I think that's right, and that's what I'm hoping for because I don't want to.
You don't play the Eagles again?
I don't want
You
to
don't
play
Jalen
the Eagles
Hurts?
again. I want to take this win. But anyway, let's talk. Anyway, unbelievable win for the Commanders. That's about that video you saw of me standing up. By the way, and I'm in the screening room, and that's Devin McCourty, that's Jason Garrett's Maria Taylor, some of the other people you don't see that. Like,
Producer Pete in a giant Santa hat.
well, it's backup producer Pete is but you understand, like that's Matt Casey's in there. Like, it's
I know.
It's my bosses, you know, and it's my colleagues. Like I'm like I'm like barely there. I'm like
Ridiculous thing. That's the gut reaction.
No,
in 2024.
Do you understand? I'm in there like the way that you have to let the long snapper into the team meeting. You know what I mean? Like it's all the real people, and then it's like stupid me, and so
Pete.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't let Pete buy on this one.
Pete does Pete's actually a really good producer. Like, for much fun as we have on Pete,
that's why we make fun of him.
I know.
Yes.
He's actually a big part of Football Night in America, and he's actually a great producer. And he's been here forever, so he can get away with the hat and his Giants homerism. People feel bad for him. He's got 3 young kids, and all he cares about is his Giants. So people, there's
great producer, questionable fatherhood.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Back at producer
3
Pete.
kids for a lot.
Exactly. But anyway, and I'm just going nuts because I'm like, it was just such an unbelievable win. I thought we were dead 6 different times, and just like, he's that dude. Connor, as exciting as we were,
nobody saw this level of play coming. He's been unbelievable. And to your point, Matthew, that you were making before, 15 carries for Commanders running backs, 32 yards. Jayden Daniels obviously had 9 carries for 81 yards, which helped the run game, but no traditional running back production in this one. We got to hear from Daniels after the game on not only just how crazy it was for this team, but how important the win was.
I love those type of situations. Those are what it's on thin ice and plays need to be made. That's what you live for. If you really love this sport, you live for those big time moments where it comes down to the end. Everything's against you back against the wall. How will you respond? You got those guys that came in on the win streak they were on. They were hot, and they're a very good team, rightfully so. Good offense, good defense, all around well prepared team, and you want to go out there, see where you match, and you match up against those type of guys.
Matthew, next year, Jayden Daniels is drafted as QB what?
I think he's got to be in the top 5. I think you're drafting Josh Allen, Lamar ahead of him.
Those are the only 2 I say with confidence.
Right, exactly. Yeah. If you wanted to draft Joe Burrow over him, I get it.
Hurts.
But I don't know.
Yeah, the rushing touchdowns.
Maybe. Because I think what will happen in the offseason is the Commanders will get a wide receiver.
That's why I asked.
They're going to get whether it's Devontae Adams, whether it's one of these, whether it's T. Higgins, they're going to whether they move up in the draft and they get somebody. But they're not going to go into the season next year with Terry McLaurin and nothing else. They will go out and maybe they'll get 2 or 3 guys, but they're going to make a big move, I believe, in this offseason to get an elite wide receiver. And so, Jay, you said last week. You said, I think you said you thought the Commanders would cover.
Yeah.
And you said you're taking the quarterback that you think is best in that game. You said Jayden Daniels.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, the other guy got knocked out after 4 pass attempts.
No, it's not a fair comparison from this game. But my point. But
I think Jayden Daniels is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
What does Jalen Hurts do better than Jayden Daniels outside of push forward for 1 yard?
Right.
What's his skill that's better than Daniels?
The Philadelphia Eagles this year, that defense is so elite. Philadelphia has allowed 20 passing touchdowns this entire year.
Yeah.
Jayden Daniels has 6 of them.
Yeah.
And he has almost a third of the touchdowns that the Eagles have allowed this season. He's played them twice, but still, again, and he's doing it. I've made this point a million times. Jayden Daniels is playing with worse talent this year than he did last year at LSU.
Yeah, definitely, in terms of wide receiver, when you look at Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors, I mean, it's not even close.
Right.
These guys are superstars already or will be superstars in the NFL.
Yeah. I think Jayden Daniels is an easy top 5 guy, and if you took him 3rd, I'm not looking at you because Allen and Lamar are the only 2 guys that I'm like, well, you're definitely taking those.
Sure.
There's
upside still with Jayden Daniels, which is insane.
Exactly.
After this kind of fantasy season.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, and McLaurin, by the way, just 4th straight game with a touchdown, 6 total touchdowns in that stretch since week 6. He's had only 1 game with fewer than 15.8 fantasy points. So as Jayden Daniels goes, so does Scary Terry, wide receiver at 17 on the week.
Jay, on the Eagles side of this game, an incredible first quarter for Saquon Barkley. He goes over 100 yards and then 22 carries for 41 yards the rest of the game. So he got what you needed in the fantasy semi-final. It just felt like if you were watching that game, you're like, oh my God, this might be a historic day for him.
Yeah, and after he broke that long one, that epic long touchdown, which he's doing as frequently as anyone in NFL history, then the Commanders just stacked the box to a comical degree. And he's getting, it's not that he just wasn't getting yards, he's constantly getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage. Like they were just selling out to try and make Kenny Pickett beat them. And Kenny Pickett had some clutch conversions, but for the most part, Pickett wasn't able to beat them. And so it'll be interesting if Jalen Hurts is unable to go against Dallas on Sunday, what this is going to look like, because you know what Dallas will do too? They will stack the box against Saquon Barkley, and they'll make Pickett beat them down the field against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a bigger story to talk about here with Jalen Hurts because concussions are. This is shout out to my friend and former colleague Stefania Bell, who always talks about this. Concussions are non-linear injuries, and so I mean, we've seen it with Cedric Tillman. How long has he been out with a concussion? And so there's I think everyone's just like, all right, well, he'll be back next week. Not necessarily, right? I mean, and so the Eagles know they're playing in the playoffs. They're not going to. They're not only not going to rush Jalen Hurts, they can't, right? There's a concussion protocol. There's 5 different steps that Jalen Hurts is going to have to clear before he can be activated against the Cowboys. And so we will see what happens. And so we're going to talk waivers here in a little bit, but just if you go into, you should make sure you have a quarterback plan. If you manage to survive to next week, make sure, because I don't think it's a given that Jalen Hurts is playing this week. One last thing on Saquon, like obviously you're starting, there's not really a huge fantasy takeaway. I just want to give up this stat because I think this is unbelievably stupid. He's got 4 touchdown runs of 65 yards or more this season. That's the most by a player in NFL history. 4 different runs of 65 or more yards. There's another stat we gave out on Football Night last night, where it was just like he's got like 8 different runs where he's been untouched for a touchdown. 8 different touchdown runs of more than 10 yards where he's been untouched. No one else in the NFL has more than 2.
Yeah,
Some people
have been using that against Saquon. It's like, no, part of his genius is that he is so patient to allow these runs to unfold in a way that, DeAndre Swift wasn't able to do last year because he's not as good as Saquon Barkley.
Our next game, guys, and by the way, A.J. Brown in this game, a little limited with Kenny Pickett. He still gets 15 targets. He turns them into 97 yards and a touchdown. So
I thought Lattimore looked bad.
It was a little bit of a tough, reemergence
3 pass
in the
interferences
NFL.
on the. Yeah, it wasn't
great. One was the one where Brown was. I didn't agree with, but Lattimore had a bad game and then left with a hamstring injury. So good times.
Which is kind of the problem with Lattimore is these soft tissue injuries. Our next game, guys, the Lions 34-17 over the Bears comfortably. Jay, Jared Goff 336 yards, 3 touchdowns. The fake fumble play. It's like a Ben Johnson audition for the Bears job.
Why'd you waste it there? He gets a guaranteed touchdown. Whatever you like. I guess that they saw the play on tape against the Packers and they wanted to recreate that. But I mean, that's as good a play as you can possibly have.
But they do that weirdly. Like, they have these great trick plays.
Against
but then they waste
the
them.
Cowboys?
Like, the Penei Sewell one. Like,
Run it up.
Like, right, you're up 40. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, save that for,
The NFC title game.
Right, like the Philly special when they save it for the Super Bowl. I don't know. But, look, there were a lot of questions, especially in the preseason. We think Jared Goff's going to have a really good year, but look at the fantasy playoffs. He's going to be on the road at Chicago, outdoors, cold weather. I'm nervous about it, but he was on the love list this week. We thought because of how well Goff is playing, because of how beat up the Bears defense is, he should have another good game, and he did. 336 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Third straight game with 22 or more fantasy points. He's now had 11 different games with multiple touchdown passes this year. That's tied for the second most. Pretty much everyone that you would want to have a good game for the Lions did. Gibbs goes off. Amon-Ra St. Brown now has back-to-back years with 100 or more receptions, 1,000 or more receiving yards, and 10 or more touchdowns. Just a model of consistency from the Sun guy.
And Jamison Williams has just been the story now. These performances where he goes off because of the deep play, the deep ball ability, 7 targets, 5 catches. But Jay, he turns that into 143 yards and a touchdown. Him down the second half of the season is kind of the guy they thought they were getting when they traded up for him in the first round.
Yeah, definitely. And just the way that this offense is built, he is the deep guy, and he's got such a good chance, disproportionately a good chance of getting open for those long plays, which are usually the subs. You don't want to be dependent on those plays, but he is so good in that role, and this offense is so good overall, and the O-line gives Goff the time for those plays to develop. So Jameson Williams, a monster. On the Bears, Connor.
One last thing on Williams, just by the way, because he's a deep threat, I don't think people realize this. He's had at least a 20% target share in 4 of the past 5 games. So I'm like, he's more involved in the offense than you think for a guy that is quote unquote a deep threat.
Yeah, and there was this idea that Tim Patrick was going to start cutting into some of that wide receiver 2 kind of workload. Tim Patrick had 1 target, no receptions yesterday. Connor, Caleb Williams feels like he's had a disappointing season, and the Bears have been a disaster. He's quietly 19 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions on the season. He's been able to put up numbers.
Right, and they're constantly in this high-volume throw script in the second half of games, which helps with that, Jay. But at the end of the day, he's still getting passing production. I think with Caleb Williams, you're seeing everything he was advertised as the first overall pick. The arm talent, the ability to create plays, holding the ball a little bit too much. But it's a rudderless ship on the offense. They just don't have a lot around him to coach him up right now. So I'll take away the positives. I think he was efficient throwing the football in this game. He does enough on the ground for you. And Keenan Allen, the veteran there, has been kind of a safety valve for him, Matthew.
Since week 12, he's been the 8th best wide receiver in fantasy football. 30% target share in the 6 games since Shane Waldron was fired. Concerns in the preseason about Fat Keenan, no longer there as well. They play Seattle next week.
I mean, he could be the Commanders' number 2 next year.
I hope we're going a little higher than that, but,
Well, T. Higgins.
Yeah, a little bit different bracket.
Exactly. Garrett Wilson, come on, Jets. Trade us Garrett Wilson.
Not happening. All right, the next one here, guys. The Vikings.
Is Madden rating too high? Is that the problem?
Yeah, trade guy. We're only 90 overall or whatever it may be.
Okay.
The Vikings beat the Seahawks 27-24. Sam Darnold, another huge day. All Sam Darnold does is throw touchdowns here, Matthew. And what we love to see is that a lot of them over the last 4 weeks have been to Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I mean, look, his 2 best games this season for Justin Jefferson have both come in the past 3 weeks. Season highs, and it's hard to believe this for Justin Jefferson, how good he's been. But season highs in fantasy points, receiving yards, he's averaging almost 30 fantasy points per game over his last 3. He's got 5 touchdowns in the last 3 as well. Sam Darnold now has 19 or more fantasy points in 5 of his past 6 games. We've been saying it for a long time. He's just a locked-in, quarterback 1. Going to be a fascinating offseason to see what the Vikings do with Darnold and J.J. McCarthy. But they're home to the Packers next week. Green Bay will be traveling on a short week. Of course, Green Bay, the game tonight. So Darnold, potential. I will say he will be a Peacocky nominee for Waiver Pickup of the Year.
If the vote were held today, I think Sam Darnold would finish 5th in MVP. It would just be Allen, Lamar, Barkley, and I think probably Goff beats him for 4. But that's incredible for where he was. He signed for $8 million guaranteed.
Do you think you don't think Daniels gets MVP votes?
I think
he's not going to win, but I'm just saying, is he somewhere on the ballot?
He might be 6th.
I was going to say he's probably right there.
Yeah, you probably have him, Mahomes. Like Mahomes has had 1 loss all season, so but I would have Daniels over Mahomes.
The real question is going to be what voters don't listen to the criteria and vote for Sam Darnold as comeback player of the year.
Yeah,
because you are technically allowed. They just urge you not to.
Because he is eligible. There is an other circumstances clause in terms of why you miss time. And to me, Darnold as well.
I feel like he was a little injured last year. Like, I mean, it was just like he missed a game with a,
Well, the thing is, too, is like, it's not, the rule was brought in to like prevent Joe Flacco from winning off the couch where he wasn't coming back from anything. Darnold actually has a real comeback story and overcame adversity.
He was a backup for a year by design.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, I think Sam Darnold has a case.
Yeah.
A big throwing script for Geno Smith in this one, guys. 43 pass attempts. He completes 31 of them for 315 yards, 3 touchdowns. He does throw the 2 picks. What really matters here, Matthew, is what a year 2 it's been for Jackson Smith and Jigba. It gives you a lot of confidence going into year 3, especially with the rumored Tyler Lockett retirement. We're just kidding. It's a joke on the show. But JSN has taken over the targets in this offense.
For fantasy, he's retired.
Yeah. So, I hear Marshall and Lattimore is considering retirement next year too, after another bad game.
I'm hearing Aaron Rodgers really is.
JSN has 18 or more fantasy points in 6 of the last 7 games. Since DK Metcalf returned, he's got a 27% target share as well. Like, it is clear that there's a connection between him and Geno Smith, and whether it's just by design because of the way the offense is running, by what Ryan Grubb, who comes into this offense with no preconceived notions, but JSN coming out of the draft, Connor, was I believe you said he was your number one guy.
Yeah, by far. He was the only receiver I had in that draft with a top 15 grade. And honestly, I thought it seemed crazy. Some people probably thought it was crazy at the time. I thought there was a lot of aspects of his game similar to Cooper Kupp. Just the way they have that two-way go and get open, they catch everything, the short area quickness. I've loved everything I've seen from JSN this year.
Yeah, nothing short of fantastic, and he'll be a fascinating guy to rank next year as well. Listen, Jay, much like Jonathan Taylor, there were a lot of performance this week that was just like 1 week too late.
Yes.
And I think perhaps there's no one better for this show than the Chubbler. The Chubbler.
The Panthers stack.
Yeah, a week after Chubby Magic went down.
Yes.
The Chubler.
Yes.
Career game.
The Chubbler. Yeah. Where was 2006 LaDainian Tomlinson last week? This is garbage. Chubby Magic. Oh, no. They've actually put it in the graphic. That's very depressing.
It's a great headline.
The Chubbler, 25 for 152,
Chubby
two
Magic.
touchdowns, adds 4 for 13 receiving games, scores the walk-off game-winning touchdown.
Unbelievable.
Even Adam Thielen scored a touchdown. Just the real twisting, the chubby knife into my...
People laughed at the Panthers.
Into my once happily chubby body.
Yeah.
Now just gaunt and defeated.
Listen, the Chubbler's had at least a 15% target share in 5 of his past 6 games. He's a true 3-down back. They're using him in all aspects of the offense, and it's his second game this year with over 150 yards.
Great.
Here's the list of running backs that have more. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. That's it. That's the entire list. Like, you wouldn't expect to have a franchise running back, like a fantasy superstar in Carolina, and it's not Jonathan Brooks, but you're damn right. It's the Chubbler. You were just a week too early.
I have all these different pieces of my team that if you just timed it a little bit better, I'd be on the way to a chubby championship. Alas, I had McCaffrey, I had J.K. Dobbins, Cooper Kupp, I had Mayfield and Darnold on my team at a time, all injured or bad times. Just choked, a chubby choke.
What are you going to do? It was an unbelievable performance for Hubbard. He's running back, too, as we head into Monday Night Football. They play the Buccaneers next week, but good for Bryce Young, by the way, who's who's QB2. Like, that might be the even bigger surprise. Like, Hubbard's been fantasy productive all year long, obviously when it counted the most for all of us, not you, Jay. You were already out of the playoffs at this point. But this was impressive, right?
This is full Alabama Bryce Young.
Yeah, this is exactly right. In the 5 games since its week 11 bye, he's averaging 18.4 fantasy points per game. Again, he 27 points yesterday. He's the number 2 quarterback. I don't know that you want to trust him next week against Tampa Bay, although I will say, like, that's not a matchup that scares you. And if you're sitting there in a deep league where, you're missing Jalen Hurts, like, I'd rather Bryce Young next week than Kenny Pickett. Right. Like, if Hurts were to miss. Anyway, but Young is going to be...
I'd rather a slap to the face than Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, well, you and the grape slappers, fair enough. But Adam Thielen has another good game here, 4th straight game with at least a 25% target share. But I think what's exciting is that, again, Bryce Young has played well enough to elevate this offense that if you're investing in Adam Thielen, if you're investing in Chuba Hubbard, then, and we'll see if they get Xavier Legette back next week, or even, Jalen Coker does something, he's didn't do much this game, but it's positive. You feel confident about starting a Panther thanks to the improved play of Bryce Young.
On the other side of this, the Cardinals season ends in disappointment. Once looked like a pretty magical playoff chance here for a team that people had low expectations of. Just a kind of blah day, Jay, for Kyler Murray in the offense. James Conner getting hurt, leaving with a knee injury after such a great start to this game was kind of the dagger, though. And he's the heart and soul of this offense right now, not the pass game.
Yeah, and he was awesome before he went down, goes 5 for 117 and a touchdown. Kyler was, it's kind of reversal of previous games where Kyler was fantasy-wise, he goes 8 for 63 and a touchdown on the ground. He throws for a touchdown through the air, but real-life-wise...
Over 20 fantasy points, like salvaging a little bit of
top
my
15
ride or
quarterback
die.
right now.
Yeah, it's still not a great ride or die season.
Do you think this
for
is
me.
a long-term issue with Marvin Harrison Jr., who again just does nothing?
I think it's a Kyler issue. Why does Trey McBride not score touchdowns? Why is now, to be fair, Marvin Harrison Jr. had a couple jump balls yesterday that you'd like to see a player of his caliber come down with. But Kyler, there's no structure of an offense with Kyler when he's just drifting out and throwing the ball up in the air. And
the thing is, this is very reductive, but just watching the game yesterday, it's a huge problem that he's 5'10". Like, he just can't see over the defense and he can't get these throws over guys. Like, he hasn't... That has manifested itself a lot in the past 4 weeks, I think.
Yeah, I disagree. Bryce Young is 5'10". I mean, you know what I mean? Drew Brees is 5'10". Like, I don't think he's been productive in the NFL. Like, at one point under Cliff Kingsbury, we talked about this. Like, they were the number one team in the NFC. Like, I think their offensive line is bad, and I think that the league has caught up with this offense. I think that, Drew Petzing is not a guy that has a big resume in the NFL. I think there were questions about him as an offense coordinator. And then, I think that I wonder if they'll make changes this offseason as well. But Marvin Harrison Jr., under 9 fantasy points in 4 of the past 5 games. Like, he's just, the lack of development of Marvin Harrison Jr. this year is really striking. And I think the offensive line has played poorly as well. I wouldn't mind seeing a different offense coordinator.
They came into this game with a couple injuries on the line.
Yeah.
It's, at the end of the day, it's got to get better.
I still think, despite being 5 down, Kyler Murray's still a good NFL quarterback. It just hurts your ceiling a little bit, and you need to be able to devise an offense that can account for that. And they've fallen apart the past month.
It's super crazy, but I bet you he's going to wind up this year with one of his worst fantasy seasons in his career, which is like an emerging Trey McBride. They add Marvin Harrison Jr. Michael Wilson is emerging and having some nice moments. Like, he's got the most talent around him, I would argue. Connor's having a good year. Like, it's a weird one. Super weird, and definitely bad call by me on ride or die. Just did not work out.
I'll give you this benefit. I think we expected, and the world expected, look at their win total, the Cardinals' defense to be bottom 3 in the league. Yeah. And they have random weeks where they are feisty and plucky, and they don't put Arizona in this, okay, Kyler's going to drop back 25 times in the second. Like Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams' fantasy production is a product of mostly, at times, obviously his abilities, but they're losing by a lot, and they're going to throw the ball, or at least drop back a lot in the second half. The Arizona doesn't always have to play that way, and I think that's a surprise this year.
I think the biggest thing on Petzing's offense, we can move off this game, is just like they just don't use Kyler as a runner. Like he ran for a touchdown, and he did in this one. Scripted runs. Like, you know what I mean? Like some of them, he'll make plays with his legs, but just like you designed runs the way that they do for Lamar or Jayden or Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, or like pick your mobile quarterback, and you've got Kyler Murray, who's as fast as any quarterback in the NFL, and they just don't do it on a consistent basis, and it drives me bananas.
Our last game, guys, the Colts beat the Titans 38-30, a very Anthony Richardson stat line, if there ever was one. 7 of 11 for 131 yards and a passing touchdown and interception. Almost just as many carries, 9 for 70 yards and a touchdown. The story of this game, more notably, Matthew, was Jonathan Taylor getting 29 carries, 218 yards, 3 touchdowns, a fantasy football semifinals hero.
Well, honestly, probably a fantasy football consolation bracket hero, because I think most people that have Jonathan Taylor lost last week,
and
they're just sitting there watching, similar to the Grape Slappers, just watching your team in the losers bracket go off the week after. I know of a number of people that tweeted at me just basically saying that Jonathan Taylor's the lost fumble, the fumble at the goal line last week was the difference between them moving on and not. But yes, John, if you managed to survive, JT brought you home. Second best fantasy game of his career. It's the third best fantasy game by a running back this season. Barkley and Kamara have had better. He had more fantasy points in this game, 39.8, than he had in his previous 4 games combined.
Yeah.
He was awesome.
On Jonathan Taylor, who has been on our show before, who's super nice, very accommodating, just the decent dude. Yeah, and also after he had the fumble last week in Denver, he stood there in front of a pool of reporters. He answered every question about it, and they were asking the same question for 5 minutes, and he still just didn't lose it, was very contrite, and so it was great to see him deliver this type of performance. And I think the thing too, Connor, is that a lot of this year, he hasn't had a great year before this game, and he's just kind of looked slow. He's not slow, clearly, because he seems to have all the explosion. I think it was just a combination of the offensive line and just the offense being a bit wonky. But he looked like 2021 Jonathan Taylor yesterday.
Also, keep in mind, Jay, you're talking about Anthony Richardson comes into the season with very little experience. Then he gets benched. Then it's Joe Flacco. It's in a completely different offense with Joe Flacco under center, and now Richardson's back. And so I think there's just been a lot of moving pieces here in Indianapolis. It's amazing. I mean, again, I know people want to, are sometimes negative. I think Shane Steichen is an unbelievable coach. Great. The fact that the Colts are still alive in the play, they're not likely going to make the playoffs, but the fact that we're sitting here at the end of Week 16 and they're still technically alive.
They're on the in the hunt graphic.
They're on the in the hunt graphic, and yes, they're in the AFC South. I get it, but still. Steichen is. I think Steichen's a hell of a coach, honestly.
If the reality is, if Taylor doesn't drop that ball, they're up 20-6. Bo Nix is having an implosion. They win that game. They're 8-7, and then they're in the box seat to make the playoffs. So it's tough, but Taylor atoned as much as he could yesterday.
But worth noting that since he returned in Week 11, Anthony Richardson is the 9th best quarterback in fantasy. So it took him a while to get there, but making good on the promise that we all saw for him in the preseason.
On the other side of this game, guys, from the Titans, Tajay Spears gets 10 carries, 27 yards. What you care about is the 2 touchdowns. What we expected is the pass game production, 3 receptions, 39 yards. Calvin Ridley also gets a touchdown and capitalizes on more bigger plays, 3 catches for 78 yards. Matthew, this offense just doesn't have a ton of consistency going forward. I guess Spears has been recently the guy with Pollard hurt.
57% of the snaps he played in this one, he's out-snapped Tony Pollard in both games. Now, they were down big in this game, and then they made a furious comeback. So I think that's part of it, because even though they used Pollard in the passing game, Spears is, quote-unquote, the passing down back. But, yes, Pollard less than 100% healthy. Spears has looked better at this stage of the season. So I do think that I will say next week they're playing Jacksonville. So I do think Ridley and both running backs are viable.
Also,
Mason Rudolph, by the way, is suddenly sort of interesting.
Also, Chigakonkwo had 11 targets, double more than any other player on the Titans. So in a favorable matchup against the Jags, also a potential streamer.
We'll have more time to talk about this game, but I just think this is a game that'll be easy to ignore. It's Titans Jaguars, but I do think
I'm going to watch every second of it.
Right. No, well, there's going to be some fantasy goodness, some unearthed fantasy goodness for people that are struggling. Again, it's a championship week, so we'll talk about it more as the week goes on.
Let's take a look at the notable injuries from Week 16 so far. Jalen Hurts with the concussion. James Conner left the game with a knee injury. Kenneth Walker dealing with an ankle. Justice Hill also in concussion protocol. Drake London dealing with a hamstring injury. And then, of course, the brutal season-ending injury for Tank Dell. That was obviously a knee injury. If you are going to be down one of these guys, there's a good chance you're looking to add somebody, whether it's for championship week, whether it's for consolation. Go ahead, Matthew.
Well, I was just going to say, Kendre Miller is still available in a lot of leagues. These are players that are available in more than 50% of Yahoo leagues. Grab Kendre Miller now before he plays tonight. We don't expect Alvin Kamara to come back the rest of the way. Jalen McMillan, huge game last night. If it wasn't for Jordan Davis making not only a game-saving interception, but also a fantasy-saving situation.
Right.
I was against Jalen McMillan in a surprising number of leagues, and if he catches that touchdown, if McMillan catches that touchdown, I lose. Luckily, Jordan Davis comes up with the interception. I managed to move on in a number of leagues that I was playing against McMillan, but over his last 3 games, 19 fantasy points per game, a 20% target share. They're clearly going to throw. And then both Raiders running backs, Madison and Abdullah, getting some work.
I appreciate that during championship week, we could still get Hunter Henry on the top waiver graphic.
Past 5 games, he's got a 25% target share.
He cooked yesterday.
He really he
Hunter
did.
Henry cooked.
I'm going to call you up in the middle of the offseason and just be like, hey, let's talk Hunter Henry.
It's been a while. And we did it for so long.
Yeah.
Just reminiscing on the good times. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we're back, we got Weekend Warriors and Sunday Scaries coming up right after this. Thanks to the Falcons, it's officially an Applebee's Pick 6 Monday this football season. A Pick 6 during any NFL Sunday game will unlock 6 free boneless wings the next day on Monday at Applebee's for both dine-in and to go. Head to your local Applebee's today and be sure to say your friends at the happy hour sent you.
And Drew Lock.
And Drew Lock. That's right.
Drew Lock definitely sent you.
Drew Lock brought you here. Weekend Warriors. We kick things off with De'Von Achane here, guys.
By the way, the Falcons defense, not on a list, but the Falcons defense was a Weekend Warrior. For those that play in leagues where you have defenses, they were amazing.
They got you a lot of points. Matthew, 31 fantasy points and an RB3 finish as it stands right now for De'Von Achane.
First Miami running back with 120 rushing yards and 70 or more receiving yards since Ronnie Brown. In 2007.
The Wildcat offense.
Yeah, 1,000%. Like, just with Jalen Waddle out, Tyreek Hill a little bit banged up, they leaned on De'Von Achane as the centerpiece of this offense. And since week 8, he's been the 3rd best running back in fantasy football. Big touchdown run to seal this for them as well. Just, again, the speed, the consistency that they're using him between the tackles. And obviously, he's a big part of the passing game, Jay.
Yep, absolutely. And that Dolphins offense continues to look right, even though Jalen Waddle missed, and the fact that they've been banged up on the offensive line. Like, Tua quietly, when he's been out there, has been very solid. And I thought that the Niners' defense was much improved against the Rams, but they're still dealing with injuries. And Achane, I mean, we talked about it before the season. Like, Achane had scope to be the number one player in fantasy. Like, he has that type of upside, and he kind of played to that level yesterday.
Yeah, they're on the road to Cleveland next week, and so you figure they'll lean on Achane quite a bit. Tua in the cold weather on the road.
I think they'll be right. If it's DTR, I think they'll be
yeah,
right.
that's a good point.
A favor of the show, Jay, makes the listen. Brian Thomas Jr., 9 catches, 132 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. Doesn't matter who's under center. BTJ's been phenomenal.
Yeah, he has a rapport with Mac Jones, which is not something
really
that many people can say over the journey. But the key here, too, is just 13 targets. He's earning targets. He's been a top 4 wide receiver in fantasy the past month. And I know you guys disagree because you don't like Brian Thomas Jr., but this guy, I think, is a top 10 wide receiver going into drafts next year. And it would not be surprising at all if he ends as a top 5 wide receiver with the season that he has next year.
He is nothing. He's been nothing short of phenomenal since week 13. He's the 4th best wide receiver in fantasy. 4th straight game with 10 or more targets. So you're right. I mean, there's a connection there with Mac Jones, and in a season in which a lot has gone wrong for the Jaguars, they have found something special in Brian Thomas Jr. We talked on Fantasy Football pregame, Connor, about James Cook. We weren't worried about it. James Cook was part of our touchdown parlay, which we cashed, by the way. Happy about that. We had a 4-touchdown parlay on Fantasy Football pregame. James Cook was part of it. He cashes it. But the question that came up during the show was, hey, are we worried about James Cook because Josh Allen last week just went nuclear? But no, massive part of this offense.
Yeah, and he can hit the big play, which is what you love, and he can get you multiple touchdowns. He's had great touchdown equity all season, but yeah, you get a little bit of a, not come back to earth, but more of a, bottom out game from Josh Allen, and James Cook gets the benefit from that.
Josh wasn't great yesterday. He threw another pick that was dropped and also hurt his hand, lost all feeling in it, and then threw it a deep ball that was so far off the camera couldn't track it. So he said it was fine. His feeling was restored in his hand, but I mean, the Jets defense looks a bit banged up right now. Sauce Gardner leaves in the hamstring, Quentin Williams out, so pretty favorable matchup for Cook and Allen to get right and potentially, secure the MVP.
Yeah, he just plays a hard brand of football, Josh Allen. Like, these moments of being really banged up are naturally going to happen.
Also, always just seems to struggle against the Patriots and the Jets, whatever the season, whatever the time.
Yeah. While we're on this game, really quickly, one of the conversations that we were having off screen was like, do you think Mayo saved his job with this? Just because
I think it mattered
Patriots.
A lot.
Yeah. Even though the Patriots lost, they showed up and they had the Bills went into this game 14-point favorites.
Yeah. And they were in trouble for a while.
For a long time.
Yeah, at one point the Patriots got into like plus 120 on the money line when they're up 14-0. It's like, oh my God, are the Patriots actually going to beat the Bills? And then eventually order was restored.
Order was.
I think it was a big game for Mayo, though. I really do. I know he's under a lot of heat right now in that market.
Understandably so. 120 total yards in 3 of the past 4 for James Dalvin Cook.
How about Deebo Samuel making the list, guys? There hasn't been many weekend warrior moments for Deebo Samuel, but he gets 9 targets. He catches 7 of them, 96 yards and a touchdown. He also had 25 rushing yards, Matthew.
He also looked like Deebo Samuel. Yeah. Like he was shaking guys off of his leg, like he was making physical plays, like they used him in the backfield a little bit. Patrick Taylor, you got nothing out of him as well. And so in a season, the 49ers have been officially eliminated from the playoffs, but it was good to see Deebo back to, that's the guy we remember. It was his best fantasy game since week 14 of last season. 24% target share for Deebo in this one as well. Kittle had a huge game. The 49ers offense kind of happened what we thought was they weren't really that effective running the ball. Taylor didn't get much run. The Dolphins have a good run defense, and so Purdy had to throw it, and it was Deebo, it was Kittle, it was a little bit of Jennings, but really nice game for Deebo Samuel, who, by the way, next week gets the Detroit Lions at home. Secondary is obviously beat up for Detroit.
Pass funnel for sure.
Yeah. I think Deebo Samuel, who's gone from fantasy non-entity 24 hours ago, now I think is probably someone you can start against Detroit. If he's going to get this type of workload, again, you don't feel great about it because it's just one game. But to your point, Matthew, the key is just that physically he looked like Deebo Samuel. And that was the biggest concern, that like maybe this guy who has taken a ton of hits over the journey, he's dealt with a lot of injuries, maybe he's just done. Like maybe he just didn't have that explosiveness, but he looked himself yesterday, which is the key.
Our final one here, Jay, Jerome Ford, who I believe was on the love list this week, Matthew, if I remember correctly. Jerome Ford, obviously Nick Chubb dealing with the broken foot. Jerome Ford gets over 24 fantasy points. He's in the top 10 running backs right now, and plenty of volume both through the air and on the ground.
Yeah, the good thing with Jerome Ford now is that that's just entirely his backfield with Nick Chubb gone, and he's not beholden to game script. Now, I don't think the Browns are going to have a game script where they're really going to run the ball, but it doesn't matter because he's getting these dump-off passes from DTR, who does like to dump the ball off. So Jerome Ford, I think he'll be a viable RB2 type next week against the Dolphins.
Yeah, by the way, Deontay Foreman fumbles on the goal line as well. So
they haven't wanted to play him anyway.
Right, exactly. So any concern that Ford might lose some playing time, I think, dissipated once Foreman fumbled on the goal line there. Back-to-back games now with 100 total yards for Jerome Ford, averaging over 21 fantasy points during that stretch. You mentioned the home game against Miami next week. Yes, between the dump-offs and just the workload there, Ford is going to be a factor next week in the fantasy finals. By the way, let's hear it for DTR, which is like this. We thought the two guys we thought you could start in Cleveland were Jerome Ford and David Njoku, who caught 8 balls and had a very good, solid game for a tight end. So let's hear it for DTR getting the ball to those two guys. No, he was awful.
Yeah,
by the way,
let's kind of hear it.
No, but you know what I mean. Like
let's hear some faint whispers.
Yeah, exactly.
And if
Sorry,
you
I'm
bet the Browns
mesmerized
team total under 18.5, you also thank DTR.
Yeah, DTR did what he was supposed to do. DTR
sorry.
did what he was supposed to do: get the ball to Ford and Njoku, be terrible the rest of the way, and make the Cincinnati Bengals defense viable.
That game was stunningly alive in the fourth quarter. It looked like they'd scored a touchdown to make it 17-13. I was like, what the hell's going on here? But
that was just the Browns defense played well.
Myles Garrett is still, I think, the best defensive player.
Ridiculous. And the Bengals actually didn't even. I don't want to say they didn't deserve to win that game, but Burrow's just a magician.
Yeah.
Burrow just made
touchdown.
Just ridiculous. There were just a couple of different plays that he made. The falling touchdown being one of them as well. But just I am rooting hard for the Bengals to get into the playoffs. I want Joe Burrow in the playoffs.
Yeah.
America is. Beat the Broncos. If they beat the Broncos, this is what we need. We need them to beat the Broncos on Saturday, the Bengals, and then we need the Chiefs. That's the problem.
Carson Wentz is the issue.
I know. But come on, Carson Wentz. You were once a top 2 pick. You were once an MVP candidate.
He's going to win MVP. He's going to win MVP if he stayed healthy.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Anyway.
Sunday Scaries, guys. We mentioned Josh Allen against the Patriots. It wasn't pretty, Matthew. Under 12 fantasy points when you needed him the most.
Yeah, I mean, the fantasy gods giveth and the fantasy gods taketh away. Josh Allen single-handedly got guys into this round in the fantasy playoffs on his back, and then the fantasy semifinals, just 11.2 fantasy points. It's his worst fantasy game since week 4. Just couldn't get anything going. Maybe the hand was hurt as well.
And the hand was hurt at the end. I think it was bad.
He just didn't have a great day at the office. And credit the Patriots defense; they were plucky.
Yep, they seemed to have a good plan. They were confusing him. They was rushing 4, and they were keeping him contained. Didn't break any of those long Allen runs really. And look, I think Josh Allen's probably going to win MVP. I think it just kind of feels like his year, and everyone wants to vote for him. But if you've made up your mind, you're just going to vote for Josh Allen over Lamar Jackson. That is wrong. This is Lamar laps him statistically,
right.
And Lamar looks like he's now going to get a 3 seed. So I would vote for Lamar Jackson. I think that if you wanted to vote for Josh Allen, it's totally defensible. He's had an amazing year, but this is not decided yet. There's still 2 weeks left in the season.
I mean, the way, again, it's such recency bias, but the way Lamar played against the Steelers versus the way Josh Allen played against the Patriots, if somebody told me, hey, I'm voting for Lamar Jackson for MVP, I'm not looking at you weird. I get it. You know what I mean?
He's had one of the greatest seasons of all time, Lamar Jackson.
Literally.
No one wants him to have 3 MVPs.
It's an MVP fatigue, right?
Yeah, that's it.
I think
Didn't this happen with Jokic?
Yeah, but
to a degree?
Yeah, it's basically the same thing. If you just took the statistical resumes and the wins and losses of both these quarterbacks and changed their names, Josh Allen would be a unanimous winner with Lamar's stat line. And it's basically the fact that people want to vote for Josh Allen, which is fine. Josh Allen's amazing. He's had a great season. But to me, it should be very, very close.
I don't disagree with that, especially when you look at, by the way, the divisions each of those guys play in as well. By the way, your Jets don't do they don't do a lot, but they shut down Cooper Kupp.
Yes.
Connor.
Not much for Cooper Kupp in this game. 3 targets, 3 catches, 24 yards. The Rams really didn't do a ton through the air in this game. Wisely,
Stafford was not good.
He wasn't great. No Quinnen Williams, so
either.
Kyron Williams got, I think, 21 carries.
Yeah.
The Rams passing threats weren't really involved.
No, and Nakua didn't do much. I mean, Nakua
No.
was fine, but
It's okay.
but Kupp after the 0-point game, and I thought like one of my shots on pregame was like Cooper Kupp rebounds in a big way.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, that didn't happen. Michael Carter didn't play in this game. I'm like, oh, he's gonna be wide open.
Sauce came out.
Yeah, but there's whatever reason. I don't know if he's slowing down or if he's hurt or he's hiding an injury, but 6 or fewer fantasy points in 3 of the past 4 games, just a 13% target share in his last 2 games. They're home to Arizona next week. Now, Arizona's been eliminated. The Rams still have something to play for, but, he's
You
going
like
to
that they're back indoors.
He's going to be – you're probably still starting him next week, but he's going to be tough to trust in the fantasy finals. I don't think he's a must-start next week, except in deeper leagues.
Our final one, Jerry Jeudy. We kind of warned everybody of this. With DTR under center, it was going to be hard to start a Browns wide receiver.
Yep. One of the great tanking moves by the Browns, going away from Jameis, who is just unequivocally a better quarterback than DTR, but they're able to, basically actively lose because Jameis throws these pick sixes, and it's like, oh, we can't keep putting Jameis out there. It's like, well, outside of the pick sixes, is actually quite good, and he's able to get the ball to his wide receivers. DTR, we have a reasonable sample now of games. For someone of DTR's talent level, he's gotten a surprising amount of starts in the NFL, and he's just not an NFL starting quarterback.
He was a day 3 pick, right? He was like a round 5 guy.
A developmental, mobile guy that, not the biggest arm, but an adequate arm.
Yeah,
not somebody you would expect to be a starter in the league.
The Browns are playing chess, not checkers.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm
Well
saying? They know
them.
it's not their year.
They don't want Jameis to steal a win.
Exactly. We're at the tankathon.
Jameis would have won that game yesterday, I think,
Probably.
with the way their defense is playing.
Oh, yeah.
So they've actively, they've gotten a
it's
loss
smart.
to help their draft position.
Smart Browns.
Stealth tanking.
Stealth tankings. Well, listen, yesterday on Fantasy Football pregame, we celebrated Festivus, but the truth of the matter is that today is actually
real
Festivus.
Festivus.
Today is the real Festivus, the airing of grievances.
My grievance is with the Carolina Panthers offense, who I built my entire fantasy team around. My franchise cornerstones, Chuba Hubbard, a.k.a. the Troubler, Adam Thielen, a.k.a. Adam Thielen. And you know what these guys, what they gave me last week? My fantasy season on the line? A giant bag of bricks to my face!
You know what? First off, I want to air grievances to the Arizona Cardinals and Drew Petzing, their offense coordinator. Because I went on a limb, and I chose Kyler Murray as my ride or die. And it's been more die than ride this year, if I'm being honest. How do you not use Kyler Murray, one of the fastest players in the NFL, his legs? He doesn't use his legs anymore. He's not running. How about Patrick Mahomes? First off, and no one wants to talk about this because everyone loves Patrick Mahomes. He's beloved. He's such a nice guy. He's so brilliant. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. But he also caused Rashee Rice to be out for the year. I don't think you guys have any idea of how much Rashee Rice I had this season. But it was a lot. But finally, my biggest grievance here, Christian McCaffrey and Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers all throughout the preseason. He's fine. He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine for week 1. He might miss week 1, but don't worry. He'll be back week 2. No. Now he's going on IR, but he'll be back after 4 weeks. Oh, no. Doesn't get back until week 10.
Well, guys, I was jealous that I wasn't here to air out grievances, but I have some of my own. Don't worry. And you're going to be really surprised. My grievance is with the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers right now.
Oh, wow.
One of the many beautiful things you could do on DraftKings is called a round robin. It's basically a coward's parlay. If you miss one of the legs, you still make money. Right. I've been talking to you guys about this all year. I have one of my favorite round robins. Adonai Mitchell, under receiving yards for the year. Keon Coleman, under receiving yards for the year. Drake London, over. Malik Neighbors, over. All 4 of those are as locked in could be. The last one I'm sweating out the last 2 weeks, as I do Jets pre and post game, is Garrett Wilson, over 1,200 yards. As Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams pile up their stats together as a quarterback wide receiver duo, and Garrett Wilson is running wide open across the middle of the field and ends the game with 5 targets, 50 yards, week after week, I have to sit there and just take it. So I have a grievance with the little milestone tour that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are doing for the Jets' meaningless games down the stretch.
Yeah, bravo.
That's it for us. When we're back, last call, we got Monday Night Football, best bets, and probably more complaints coming your way. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook.
The crown is yours.
The crown is yours.
The crown is yours.
Oh, the crown. Just checked. It's yours.
Last
The crown.
call. Here's the most bet player props for Monday Night Football. The Saints at Green Bay. This is the Publix board. Jay, what do you like in this game?
Taking Jordan Love under 29.5 passing attempts. He's gone under in 5 straight games. Over that span, he is averaging just 23 passing attempts. Matt LaFleur loves to run the ball, particularly with a lead. It's 14-point favorites. I don't think Jordan Love needs to throw 30 times tonight.
What about you, Matthew?
Yeah, game script also plays into mine. I have Kendre Miller over 14.5 receiving yards. No Alvin Kamara. We know Spencer Rattler. We know this offense likes to dump off to the running back as well as 2 touchdown underdogs and not a lot in the passing game. I could see them dumping off to Kendre Miller. All he needs is 1. So give me over 14.5 receiving yards for Kendre Miller against a Packers defense that allows the 5th most receiving yards to opposing running backs.
I agree with you guys on the script, but I still like Romeo Doubs on his receiving yards because it's only 37.5 right now. Doubs in his return from injury had 5 targets last week. I think he'll be the guy tonight for Green Bay, and that number is just pretty low. He could do that on 3 plays. So Romeo Doubs over 37.5 receiving yards. Here's Matthew's top players tonight for the game.
Again, as I mentioned, Kendre Miller comes in at running back 2, high-end flex today. But even if he's available in your league, pick him up potentially for next week. I have Jayden Reed, the highest ranked of all the Packers wide receivers there. But again, it's sort of pick your poison here. If you're desperate at tight end, Tucker Kraft, Juwan Johnson, and even Foster Moreau. Like the island of Foster Moreau. Yeah, we could see some tight end touchdowns tonight.
One of the underrated great stories in football, by the way, Foster Moreau.
Oh, for sure.
That he's overcome.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you're not more bullish on Juwan Johnson. Tis the season.
It is the season. Like, Juwan Johnson led me to a victory last year over stupid Dev, and in our playoff matchup, Dev's had the best team all year, but he just ran into a buzzsaw. Like, thank you very much. No, JSN had a monster game for me, of course, Terry McLaurin, and of course, Faith in 5. My guy, Jayden Daniels, just leading me to victory there. So, I'm going to be playing in the finals, it looks like, against Big Show, but stupid Dev drinks for free. Be honest with you, like, poor kid, worked his ass off on our show. He had the best team all year. This is what happens sometimes in fantasy football. I'm just going to admit it. Like, I have a good team. Dev, from start to finish, literally had the best team. He just, one of those weeks.
You should abdicate your spot in the final.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah,
but he does drink for free. We love you, stupid Dev. Good luck in 3rd place. There you go, in the 3rd place game. Well, listen, Chubby Magic isn't playing for 3rd place, so...
Unbelievable. Wow, a little knife at Dev after you took the knife on Mahomes for maiming Rashee Rice in your grievance.
Big Show making the championship on his debut season in fantasy.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Big Shows are the hero we all need right now.
Yeah, I know. It's only Big Show between me and back-to-back championships.
Please, Big Show.
A dynasty is what's on stake. Hey, it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We're off tomorrow. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday for Jay and Connor. I'm Matthew. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.